I saw something on the street, namely a kid sleeping in a cardboard box on a posh LA street, which seemed strangely incongruous. And there was dumps. You know, my mind sort of slid back to the two rhymes, which obviously had been cooking somewhere.
And when did this happen?
This happened 3 years ago, actually. And I worked on the book for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and what couldn't happen back in '65, or what I couldn't make happen, simply came about. The two verses intertwined. See, dumps in the '60s, I thought meant depression.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the '60s was in therapy.
Dumps, right.
Yeah, I was in therapy. Everybody who was anybody was in therapy.
Well, not everybody.
Well, everybody I knew.
Some of us did.
In the '90s, dumps is dumps, literally. Yeah. Dumps is the state of the world. Dumps is the condition of cities, and dumps is the condition of a lot of people's lives. And it made a lot more sense. And these two obscure, strange, haiku-ish verses suddenly took on a resonance, and they sort of clung together and made their own story.
We're all in the dumps for diamonds or trumps. The kittens are going to St. Paul's. The baby is bit. The moon's in a fit, and the houses are built without walls. Jack and Guy went out in this rye, and they found a little boy with one black eye. Come says Jack, let's knock him on the head. No, says Guy, let's buy him some bread. You buy one loaf, and I'll buy two, and we'll bring him up, as other folk do.
Now, actually, you read those as though it was one long verse, but you know they were two separate, having nothing to do with each other, 17th or 18th century rhymes. And they're beautiful. We don't know what they mean. They did mean something, probably, historically, socially, whatever.
How should it be interpreted for children?
Oh, any way you like. Whatever their original meanings were are lost in time. See, when these things were parodies, probably, social parodies or whatever, when they lost their meaning, they were dumped into the nursery. I mean, everything that's useless is given to kids, right? Because kids are not afraid of things that don't mean anything. Only we become afraid of things that don't mean anything. So they love the language and the rhythm and the syncopation, and that's how a nursery rhyme comes about. And so then there's a collection of nursery rhymes based on stuff that the adults don't know what to do with.
It says here, right below what I just read, which I like to read, two traditional rhymes from Mother Goose, ingeniously joined and interpreted by Maurice Sendak.
That's nice.
Which is true. I mean, you have. Now, some say this is a sad book and a painful book. Do you see it that way?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's real life. It's also a happy book because it has a happy ending despite all the odds. It also is a book about everyday life. How do you exclude sad from everyday life?
Do you have a different vision for what's good for children's reading than other authors, than a prevailing wisdom?
Well, my feeling is you tell the truth as best you can. And the people who need the truth most are children to defend themselves. To create a little quaint ghetto land, otherwise known as kiddie book land, where you discreetly put in information which is totally useless to children. It's something that bothers me a lot. There's plenty of room for sweet books and Pat the Bunny and Pat the Fried Egg and Pat whatever you like. There's also room for books that are more serious, perhaps, and go to another level, or another...
Tougher, more emotional, more demanding, more...
I've been in the business for 40 years, and for 40 years I've heard from children. And their letters are so fierce.
Fierce in what way?
Well, I mean, they ask you such incredibly personal questions. I wonder why they're asking me. Why aren't they asking their parents? The answer simply is they probably cannot ask their parents. So they ask the strange man who wrote the strange book.
Do you feel inadequate to respond?
No.
Because you don't know the answer?
Or I often don't know the answer, but you just tell them you don't know the answer. What's so touching is they're asking the question. And the questions frequently have to do with life and death, and sex, sadness, and morbidity, happiness, love.
Right.
Mama, Papa, what'll I do if they die?
My sense of self and identity.
Well, frank questions, pragmatic questions about life. About what if they lose their parents? And so this, after 40 years, tells me that these small people, their minds are teeming with serious questions about life. And then I think we do them an immense injustice when we patronize them in what's called a children's book, which is playtime and cute time. I don't want to generalize, which of course I am, because there should be room for those books. They should have fun too.
Is there a universal theme in look, here's where the wild things are, story and pictures. Here, I don't mind holding them up because they're also beautiful, but here's where the wild things are outside over there. Do you have, obviously you do.
What?
I was going to say you do it all.
I do it all.
Obviously you do.
Well, just look at all
In the
these,
Night Kitchen.
Look at all these titles. They're all places where the wild things are outside over there in the Night Kitchen. They're all sort of like pointing to places that perhaps are hard to get to.
What's the theme then?
The theme then is, how does a kid get through an occasion when he or she is all by him or herself without the aid and assistance of an adult?
And the answer?
It could be they make out as best they can. And in 1960s, when I did The Wild Things, it was a middle-class kid, like I was, just having a temper tantrum in the cozy comfort of his home. And he blows up, and his mother blows right back up at him, and he didn't quite expect that. And she has the power over him, so she puts him in his room. What does a kid do who all power is taken away from him? How does he get back? In actuality, he can't. He has to wait till he's released and he's fed. Wild Thing says that in that particular moment, which takes all of 2 seconds, he has a humongous fantasy of rage and gets even. And that's the only way a kid can get back, is through fantasy. Well, in the 60s and 70s, and these books were all in the confines of a safe world where the kid's at home. And that moment where he or she is alone and he has to make use, or she has to make use of illogic, because they don't have logic yet or experience, it's so touching to see how they get out of a situation.
And so you've sort of said it, but in a more direct question, what do you hope the kids get out of this? What do you...
Comfort.
Security?
Security. The sense that there are adults out there who are cognizant of what they're going through.
Yeah. Who hear them. Somebody hears them.
Yeah. And I don't mean to be doleful and deadly serious. There's fun. I proclaim that there's fun in the work. There has to be, because kids are so energetic.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a look. I don't want to get too far because I got a lot of questions, but I don't want to get too far. Let's take a look at some of these slides. First slide. There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So should we say anything about this?
Well, this
is right out of the pages.
Yeah, it's out of context.
We're all in the dumps with Jack and Guy.
You see, these kids, unlike Max and Wild Things, have no homes to go to. This is the 90s.
Right.
So these kids are making out in the streets. There is no comfort here. But they do have the moon that's like the big mama watching over them. In fact, oddly, sadly, that very much looks like my mama.
Well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you find... Do you draw these characters based on relatives and...
Well, not consciously. I mean, I did in Where the Wild Things Are. I was getting even with a lot of relatives in that book.
So you made relatives into monsters.
Yeah. Well, they were monsters to me as a child. They came, infested the house on weekends. I didn't understand why. I knew I had to love and respect them, but I didn't. They ate our food, which seemed to me a dismal fact. They pinched you. They clawed you. They were Wild Things.
Why do you think that book was so successful? Written in 1963.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it was the first of a kind, but when I did it, working with my editor at Harper and Row in those days, she and I were not aware that this was an extraordinary event. This was my next book.
Right.
And we both enjoyed doing it a lot. I loved working with her on it. We were stunned when it came out and caused such a rumpus, literally. I think in retrospect, one has to say perhaps there was never a book with so many ugly creatures in it, or a child who yelled at his mother. No kid in an American children's book had yelled at his mother. No mother in a children's book had yelled back at her child. I guess. I don't know why else.
Why did you leave all this to go
away?
Yeah.
Oh, I love opera. I love music better than anything in the whole world. And I have no talent, except that I can whistle on pitch, all of the Mozart, Schubert, Haydn, Beethoven symphonies. Nobody wants to listen to
you. You can whistle on pitch, all of that?
Yeah. But no one's going to ask you to give a concert.
A whistling concert?
No, not going to happen.
I mean, do you wish, if you could wish for a perfect life for you?
I would have been a musician.
Yeah.
I would have been a musician.
I mean, you would have been a violinist, or you would have been a pianist?
Pianist. or a singer.
Yeah.
I'd even settle for a chorus member at this point.
But if you had your druthers, a life in music would have been preferable.
Yeah.
No matter how much money all this made, no matter anything. You traded all in for a life in music.
All of this stuff, these books, come about only through music, only through listening to music. It's a conceit that I created in my own head.
How does that happen?
I put special music on the record player.
And that generates the creativity?
I pretend that it does. And then I assume
so you
it does.
give credit to the music even though it might not deserve it, but it seems to work.
Of course.
So if you think it works, it works.
Mozart is doing it, or Schubert is doing it, and I love these guys.
So therefore it becomes a genius product, doesn't it?
Well, you said it. I mean, I collaborate with the best.
Yeah, I mean, you do choose well, don't you?
Yeah. So when it came to designing, changing careers where we were, Frank Corsaro, who's a great opera director in New York City, knew my work, called me up, was doing the Magic Flute by Mozart, said, you want to design the Magic Flute? I mean, why not? This is the dream come true. So I dumped all this. After all, I've been doing books since I was 19, and 50 is a good time to either change career or have a nervous breakdown. Maybe I combined both things at one time. But I spent more than 10 years designing operas with Frank and ballets, and I was where I wanted to be with music, listening to music, designing for music, collaborating with the great composers rather than the great writers. I've collaborated with a lot of writers, and it put me into a social condition, which I like very much, because this is very isolated work.
What do you mean? Oh, it puts you, I am in a social condition, meaning that it puts you in association with other people.
Yeah.
So, and you like that.
I like that.
You don't
very
like
much.
the isolation and the
Well, I do, but it goes too far. You can go crazy alone with a book for 3 to 5 years. You really can, even with Mozart, Schubert, etc.
Now, I can't figure out whether you're a really happy man or not.
Oh, I can't either, so why should you?
Yes, that's right. You can. But do you grapple with it, or do you grapple with it? If you're not, how do you get there?
I think I come to a kind of simplistic conclusion, which is I'm happy when I'm working.
Yeah.
When I was doing dumps, I was never so happy in the whole world.
Really?
I was really happy listening to my music. I was directing a children's theater piece.
Yeah.
During the daytime, I was illustrating Jack and Guy. In the evening, I was listening to my music. I was worn out. I was happy as a clam, however happy a clam is. Never did understand that.
I didn't either. I was just saying, what the hell does that mean? I don't either. Now, you cannot have an interview with you without asking this. You don't have children of your own.
No, I do not. No.
I mean, and everybody must always ask about that.
Oh, of course they do.
They do. And you say what?
Well, the assumption is that you do because you're doing this. Well, the assumption is that you began to do this because you love children so much.
Therefore,
so then why don't you have children?
Yes, sir.
But then you have to go back to the beginning. This is not why I began to do it.
I began
to illustrate books for children because that's what I do for a living. That's the congenital mix in me that says this is the work you do. Yeah. This was not a choice. This was not a career choice. I started to draw pictures. I was doing children's books when I was a child, so that I don't do them for children.
Do you think you would be a good father?
No. No. I think very few artists make good fathers. I think very few creative people make good fathers.
And is that the reason you didn't have children?
Yeah. I mean, that was a major reason why I don't have children, because I would really hate to fail at that. Yeah. That's a big failure.
You bet. I mean, and if you fail at that, you're not the only person that suffers.
Exactly. Whereas if you fail at a book, well, the book stinks.
If the book's not so good, so you don't make as much money.
Exactly. You do another book.
Do another book. That's right.
Yeah.
And the bad book's not going to cry out and say you screwed up my life.
No, you may cry, but the books don't cry.
We're all in the dumps with Jack and Guy, 2 nursery rhymes with pictures by Maurice Sendak. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
At this
nice
time.
to be here.
Thank you.